What's up guys, Ivan Carranza here, and today we're gonna talk about whether custom or boutique instruments are worth buying. If you've been following the channel, you probably watched the video where I unboxed my brand new custom Dingwall bass. In case you haven't watched that, I'm gonna put a card up here and also a link below for you to check that out. That is my very first full custom bass, and I picked all the specs, the wood, the neck, as much as I could, taking into consideration how much was allowed me to pick or change using the options or the available options provided by Dingwall. Now I have instruments ranging from 120 euros up to my Dingwall, which costs more or less like 4K ish, and they all have different ranges of playability, sound, and comfort or ergonomics levels that make those instruments better or worse or higher quality or not. Now I want to talk about this because me growing up, starting to play bass and going to talk bass, or the beginnings of YouTube, or looking at bass players of other bands with some really fancy instruments, especially on the web, on forums, like really super high-end boutique basses. My eye always kept gravitating towards those super fancy instruments, like, wow, this amazing boutique builder that builds these crazy looking basses that are works of art, that always caught my attention. Now, after playing a bunch of basses, either by going to a instrument shop and playing them there, or due to me reviewing the basses on the channel, I've gotten to play like so many basses from very different price points, different manufacturers, production basses, custom basses, etc. And there are a couple of things that I've noticed. So what I want to do is break down the range of the instruments into 4 price points or 4 different levels. You could break it into more sections if you want, but just for simplicity's sake, we're going to keep it to 4. Now, on the beginning of the spectrum, the first level would be like entry-level basses, budget-friendly instruments. I would put this in a category like ranging from $50 or 50 euro up to maybe 400-ish euro or dollars, depending on where you are. And here we have instruments that are targeted towards beginner people. They have simple pickups, not many crazy components. It's a functional instrument, especially nowadays, because, for example, that 120 euro bass that I have is an amazing instrument. Super easy to play, great action. It is fun to play, it is comfortable to play, but some of the components are not that solid. The tuners are not that good, the bridge is not that good, the pickups could be better, and the carvings of the body could be more comfortable as well. But as an instrument to practice and start playing, I wish I had that bass when I started to play, to be completely honest. And I don't want to name any brands here in the video, just to avoid causing conflicts or that you think I'm suggesting you to buy any brand. So I'm going to keep it as brandless as possible, other than my Dingwall that I just mentioned. But those instruments, like I mentioned, are targeted towards beginners, and the ones on the upper end of that spectrum, like 300, 400-ish, have already some pretty decent components most of the time. Better pickups, better bridges, maybe a bit better wood, they feel more solid, and are reliable instruments. I've played some, P or J style instruments in that price range at 300, 400-ish, that are just amazing. I mean, I really like the way they feel, they play. Superb instruments. Then we have the next level, which would be like intermediate, mid-price instruments, I would say. I would put this in like 500 to close to 1,000 maybe. And here we already have definitely better quality in the components, maybe better woods, better pickups, maybe some better preamps in the instruments, and some of the basses here already have like brand name pickups and more solid components, like better bridges, better tuners, and they feel like I would say real instruments, you know, because you do feel a difference when you grab an instrument that's well constructed. You feel like it's something solid that responds to your touch. Especially the ones like ranging from like 700-ish to 1,000. You can take those instruments to a pro show or tour or recording session without having to worry that, you know, they are like inferior quality. Maybe you might want to upgrade the pickup at some point, but those instruments, generally speaking, are already pretty solid instruments that you can definitely play with, you know, your entire career as a bass player and be completely fine. Then we have like the, I would say, upper or like high-end spectrum of most production basses, which ranges between like 1K to 2K, which is a very big jump in price, because, you know, we have $1,000 or euro in price point, but it depends a lot on the brand and where the company is located, you know, which features the instrument has. But like I mentioned, for simplicity's sake, we're going to keep it only to 4 levels here. Now in that range, the 1,000 to 2K, we're talking about really pro level instruments most of the time that have great and solid features. Now, depending from company to company, the quality control is going to vary, of course, but usually in that price point, you're already talking about something that you would get as a tool if you want to play music professionally, or if you just want to buy a better, like, solid instrument to, you know, keep with you for the rest of your playing life as a bass player, whether you're as a hobbyist or as a pro bass player. If you buy something in that price range, most of the time, it's going to be super solid. After that, you know, 2K plus, we're already starting to get into the realm of custom boutique instruments. I thought about extending that to like 3K-ish, but there are some production basses that are super high quality that are already here. So 2K plus, let's consider like premium production instruments and custom boutique instruments. And here we already getting to the point of we're paying for some cosmetic features that make the instrument look nicer, but that do not add performance value most of the time. But we're also paying here most of the time for more attention to detail and quality control, how the bass is assembled, which materials are being used. And then if you're talking about custom instruments, here you can pick different woods, different pickups, preamps, I don't know, luminlays, block inlays, that kind of thing, right? And from a certain point, how much an instrument costs, or the difference between, let's say, a €1,000 instrument or $1,000 instrument and a 3K instrument, there's a price point where you start getting diminishing returns in terms of performance the more you play. And it varies definitely from brand to brand. Here's something very interesting that I've noticed. If you have an instrument that feels good in your hands, it feels comfortable, you like how it feels to play it, first of all, you're going to spend more time playing because you enjoy using the instrument, and you're going to come up with different things, with different ideas, different bass lines, different riffs. So that's something to take into account, because I've gotten some great ideas to play, and I feel like grabbing some instruments that are not especially the most expensive instrument that I have all the time. So do not like look down upon lower end or like budget friendly instruments just because they are low price. Some of them are terrific, and some of them are even better than some custom or boutique instruments because of the way they make you feel and how you respond to the instrument as well. Now, for the boutique and custom instruments, we are talking some different parameters here, because some companies or brands or builders have their base, I mean, no pun intended, like their core models, and you can change, for example, the body wood construction, the type of neck, type of fingerboard, and so on. And some other builders are like full-on custom. You know, you can provide them with a template of the body shape that you want, and they can make that. So there are different things that you can change, and that is going to affect the price point as well. which is what I mentioned. At some point, you're gonna start reaching diminishing returns in terms of performance. And having those like super fancy woods and tops and 14 or 28 piece neck or something like that, it looks amazing. It looks beautiful. It's stunning. But I don't want to say most of the time, but sometimes those instruments have a very unique tone, to put it nicely. And sometimes that unique tone is very hard to make it work in a mix. You know, they sound great on their own, they look stunning, they're visual works of art, but make them fit into a musical scenario can sometimes be kind of tricky. And that's not just my opinion, it's also been, you know, shared to me by friends of mine who are also bass players, some mixing engineers, my mentors, for example, my teachers. So there's a bit of a dangerous aspect there, because you might spend a bunch of money on an instrument and it sounds kind of lifeless and doesn't fit in any kind of mix. If you play in an original band and you want to have that instrument and you want to make it work in that context, then by all means, do that. But sometimes by you bringing that instrument to a session or to play with other people, it might not work and you might end up being disappointed because you're going to have to grab another bass most of the time, because even if you want to play that, it doesn't work that well in the setting. So that's something to consider. Now, my experience since I got my Dingwall bass, you know, I've played Dingwall basses for the past 10 years, more or less. And by the way, I'm going to do a full review of that bass at some point. I'm definitely going to do that. And you know, I got my first Dingwall bass about in 2010. And then I had to sell it because I had tendonitis. Then I bought a Super J, and the bass that I got, the Super P, was a gift to myself for finishing my master's degree in music. It costs a bunch of money, you know, it's super expensive, no questions about it. And you could argue this, it is just a P bass, you know, and why would I pay so much for a simple P bass? I can just grab any brand. And this is not a plug for Dingwall, by the way. This is not sponsored at all. Of course, there are some features that you do get with a custom or boutique instrument that you do not get most of the time on production basses. For example, I spec'd my bass with a Swamp Ash body instead of the stock option, which is older. Then I grabbed a Wenge neck, which was an upcharge instead of the maple neck. Then I decided to put some block inlays, side dot loom inlays, add a bridge pickup, and those things all add, add cost to the final product. Now, whether one needs that or not, that is entirely up to you. And at one point, I thought about, making a very stripped down version of the instrument to, save money and keep the costs down. But I thought, if I'm gonna spend money on a custom instrument and I'm gonna wait so long for me to get that instrument, I wanna, get it, and afterwards, I don't wanna feel or think, what if I would have gotten this instead of that? That's why I decided, I'm gonna go full on the way I want it to be. And then if I don't like it, at least I give it my best at the options that I thought would be my favorite. And how you pick those things, the woods, the parts, the pickups, the preamp, whatever, depends differently on what kind of taste you have, what do you like, what have you liked on previous basses or not. And I would definitely ask the opinion of the builder as well, because they built a lot of basses or instruments throughout the year. They've noticed things, how different parts or different body woods work together, what people tend to like in a combination, what people tend to not like. So keeping an ear open for their thoughts is definitely useful. Now, some of the other things that come most of the time with a very high-end bass or product is that the ergonomics are most of the time superior. When I have my bass, my custom bass, it feels like it's an extension of my body. It is extremely comfortable to play. There are carvings and round edges that's super smooth, and you don't feel like you have a block of wood next to you. So it is like an extension of yourself, like I mentioned. The contouring of the neck joint, the upper end horn where you reach the upper notes, how the neck is carved, the transition from neck to headstock, it's smooth, the fit and finish, how the neck is put into the body. They are something like might seem minor at first, but actually have a big impact in the way you play and how you feel with the instrument. Even though I feel like super comfortable with that bass and it's super easy to play, like it's like really effortless, I do not play it that often, believe it or not. I've recorded the EP of my band Ashmakers mostly with that bass, but I don't practice with it all the time, even though I really like it. And here's why. Because it's so easy to play and so comfortable, whenever I grab other basses, they feel harder to play and I have to work a little harder to play something, which is why I practice on those other instruments. And then when I come back to my custom bass, it is even easier to play. But I keep my chops and my ability to, swap between different instrument levels and quality levels, if you want to put it that way, by practicing on other stuff and challenging myself to be able to play it on those instruments as well. Because whenever I practice too long on that bass and I grab one of the other ones, I'm like, oh, I notice that in my hands, because I have to press a little harder, have to stretch a little more. Some things are more complicated to fret because of the way how the bass sits on your body and the neck position and whatnot. But is the ability to add a Swamp Ash body and blocking lace worth the extra, I don't know, $1,000? Is our side dot Lumi lace worth the extra upcharge to you? Maybe not, and that is completely fine. And you can get you can just play a normal regular instrument. Now, my point here is that you have to decide for yourself whether those extra features, such as different body wood, different neck wood, different amount of neck pieces, or different pickups, different preamps, side dot Lumi lace, stainless steel frets, number frets, and whether there's chambering or not, whether those features are worth it to you or not. Because from a certain price point, like I said before, you're gonna start getting diminishing returns in terms of, okay, is a $1,000 P-bass gonna sound much different than a $3,000 P-bass? Is a regular standard J style instrument gonna sound that much different than the same thing but with some extra bells and whistles, like from a performance standpoint? So those are things that you have to decide for yourself. And something to keep in mind is that whether an instrument is super expensive or not doesn't really reflect on how good it's gonna feel in your hand and if it's gonna fit the music as well. Now, my recommendation would be to try as many instruments as you can from different price points, so you can decide for yourself whether those extra bells and whistles are worth it to you. If they're not, that is completely fine. Like I mentioned, there are some super solid, amazing instruments that are not custom built or boutique-like and are fairly affordable. In my case, I enjoy definitely playing my custom instrument. It feels super natural, extremely comfortable, and it sounds really good. But I'm also aware that, from a certain price point, a P-bass is gonna sound like a P-bass, a J is gonna sound like a J. So you're paying for luxury features at some point. It's not like bass A is gonna be a better overall instrument just because it costs $2,000 more. So that's something to keep in mind. I hope you guys liked the video. Let me know in the comments which is your favorite bass brand and if you would be interested in watching a video comparison between all my basses. Also, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell to stay up to date with the content that's coming to the channel. As always, thank you guys for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Take care.